Hi everyone, welcome to Downward Dog Rising. My name's Traci and I'm going to give you bridging tonight. So I want to show you the difference between bridging in a neutral spine where you just hip hinge up and down, and when you bridge and articulate your spine. And there's a difference between the two types of bridging because one of them stabilizes your spine and the other one mobilizes your spine. So we want to have stability before we work on mobility. And let's just start off with a warm-up where we start doing pelvic tilts, and then I want you to go a little deeper and activate your deep core muscles to actually tilt your pelvis, to move your hips. And then I find that if you ever get hip pain or low back pain, sometimes your hips could be misaligned. One could be hiking up, they could be out of alignment. So here's just something to help see how you're doing and to catch yourself if one of the hips is a little higher than the other. So let's start. I'm going to have you lie down on your back. We're just going to have our knees be bent. Come all the way down to your mat. And then your shoulders, your hips, the middle of the knee joint goes straight over the second toe. So we just align shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. And then basically what I want you to feel, take a moment where you breathe in so your ribs fully expand outward. And then on your exhale, I just want you to start to pull the abdominal wall. Feel like it draws in, and you can almost lengthen it to the anterior of the spine. So if we were to go through the body, go through three-dimensionally, then you would approach the front of the spine. This would be the back of our spine, and then this would be the anterior, the front of our spine. So basically, I want you to feel how you can pull the abdominal wall in. Now, as soon as you do that, you should feel the low back touching the mat and it lengthens into the mat. And then you just relax the abdominal tone. You inhale, spine lengthens. You exhale, pull those abdominals into the length of your spine, and then you relax. And you'll start to feel how the low back really comes down into the mat. Now the next part of this, I want you to use that pulling in sensation, your abdominal wall pulling in, and you're going to use that to tilt the two hip bones. These two bones here, anterior, superior, iliac spine. You want to inhale, then pull the abdominals in and tilt your hips back towards navel. That's 12 o'clock on the face of a clock, so we call this pelvic clock. And then if you tilt forward towards pubic bone, notice how my low back starts to lift a little bit off the mat. So I'm just doing this as your posterior pelvic tilt, tailbone long. The low back lengthens into the mat. Inhale, the hip bones roll forward, your back arches slightly off the mat. So instead of doing cat-cow on all fours, just imagine here's cat when you your tailbone lengthens down, and then here would be your cow when you arch your back slightly. Let's do 3 more. I want you to feel the abdominals just really pull tight to your back, and then exhale, release. 2 more. So you're going to start to really feel those muscles in the low back as well. Your back is going to warm up from doing this. And 1 more time. Exhale, scoop in. Gently let your hips rock forward. Okay, so to find your neutral spine, the 2 bony landmarks, anterior, superior, iliac spines, they're in a straight line with your pubic symphysis, your pubic bone. Notice how if you posteriorly tilt, your hip bones are lower than your pubic bone. Notice if you anteriorly tilt, your pubic bone's lower than your hip bones. So then in between those 2 tilts, we're straight, we're neutral. If you had a glass of water, you could stick a glass of water on your hips, on your pelvis here, and then that's when you know you're in your neutral. So we're going to do a hip bridge in neutral. So you want to feel how these two hip bones, that's your hinge, and then there's no weight in the neck, the weight's across middle back, and you know you're in the right spot because it's going to really open your chest wide, and it feels like it's like opening, your collarbones widen. So what you do, you press into all four corners of your feet, you scoop abdominals in, you bridge up, your tailbone's reaching long. Notice how I'm not arching my back. There's no anterior tilt to my spine right now. I don't allow my knees to splay out. I'm keeping my knees in line with those hip sockets, mid knees over second toes. Now here comes the bridge. You just go straight to the mat. Ideally, hips hit simultaneously. Tailbone long, press into all four corners of your feet. Notice how I'm not putting pressure in my neck vertebra. I feel nice and open across shoulders and chest. And then I just bring the bridge straight back to the mat again. Let's do 8 more. Straight back down to mat, it's a straight bridge. 7. Squeeze your glutes, tailbone stretches away. Your abs are hugging in tight to your spine. 6 more. Chest open, straight back to your mat. And 5. Really scoop abdominals and push into all four corners of your feet. Hips come down simultaneously. Feel those hips, the hinge right there. 3. Inhale. Exhale. So we're working on our stability of our pelvis, and this will stabilize your low back, your lumbar spine. Tighten core. Inhale. Exhale. Lower down. Last one. Breathing in. Scoop core tight. Exhale. Really squeeze those glutes. Tailbone stretches away. And then you just set that hip hinge straight back to mat. Pull knees in. Maybe reach under the knees. Hug knees in, take 3 deep inhales and exhales, release your spine. Two more times, deep inhale. And one more time, deep inhale. Awesome. So now we plant our feet back on the mat. So when we bridge like this, we're keeping pelvis stable. We don't want our hips rocking and rolling around. We're keeping them in that neutral spine. And then I'm going to show you when you articulate. Now we're going to work on our spinal mobility. And then just one word of caution. You wouldn't do spinal articulating bridges if you have any hardware in your back, in your spine, holding it together. Say you had scoliosis when you were young and the doctors, or any age really, and it got to a certain curve and the doctors put rods in your back to stabilize it, to hold things together, to give it support. You're not going to do articulating bridges when you have rods in your back. So you don't want to go in there and disturb anything. So a neutral bridge is one thing where you're not pulling those rods apart, but you're not going to try to pull them wide apart. So avoid articulating bridge. So next, what I want you to do, we're going to do our posterior pelvic tilt. That can start the beginning of your articulating bridge. So here's your neutral. Scoop into your core. Tailbone lengthens. Now your low back is long into the mat. When you're in that posterior pelvic tilt, you're going to feel those gluteals, the backs of the thighs. You scoop in, and then I want you to just lift up. You lift up the tailbone, the sacrum, and then you're pushing down into your feet, and then try to inhale, and then exhale, lift up a notch. Inhale, exhale, lift up another notch. Inhale, exhale. So you try to make your way up the spine. Little by little, you peel up, peel up, peel up. Notice how I'm not arching my back. I'm still working through the neutral once I get up. Chest is wide open. Inhale, your ribs expand. Now I want you to relax your breastbone, your sternum. Exhale. So place vertebra down mid-back between shoulder blades. Now inhale. And then exhale. Work your way down. Go even slower if you feel wobbly side to side. Slow down. Bring your breath and attention and focus into that area. If you do have scoliosis, you'll feel yourself kind of go side to side, a little wobble. So you're just trying to make your way down. Tighten in. And then you just work on going down through each section of your spine. The articular facet joints, if you get super tight, they can lock together, and then your spine will be inhibited. It won't move as much in certain areas. And so what we do, we breathe into the space in between each vertebra, and we try to make sure that we get that mobility. Let's just do a couple more. We won't do 10 like this. That's kind of intense. So start off, you're in your neutral. Inhale, lengthen the head away from tailbone. Now peel back into that posterior pelvic tilt. You're scooping the abdominal wall into the length of your spine. Press into all four corners of your feet. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Make your way up. Between shoulder blades, you'll feel collarbones widen across your mat. Now release your breastbone, your sternum. Going down. Right there, I have a block. Try to lengthen. And then when you end, you'll notice you go into a slight little anterior tilt when you make it to the bottom of your spine. And then we'll just do one more. And I'm not going to talk, just feel yourself. Work from the bottom of your spine up to where your breastbone is, mid-back, sternum. Other side would be thoracic spine. So you're in a slight little arch right now. That's your anterior pelvic tilt. Come into neutral, scoop into the length of your spine. Now here comes that posterior tilt. Tailbone up, back of pelvis comes up. Now go real slow and breathe. All the way to the tailbone. Excellent. Just hug knees into chest for a moment. Maybe rock side to side across low back if that's within your practice. That's okay on your back. Doesn't bother it. Gently release your spine. Side to side. Okay, let's come back center. Okay, placing your feet back on the mat. Now, I'm going to sit up. You don't have to sit up. I'm going to show you what I mean. So you're on the mat. You're lying down just like you were. Feel for the bottom of your ribs. Maybe take your thumbs to the side, bottom of each side of the rib cage, and then take either the index fingers or your middle fingers right where those hip bones are, Now notice how there's soft tissue between the bottom of the ribs and the hip bones. Now, we want to make sure that when we section our pelvis straight down the center into two halves, we want to make sure that as we lift one half of your pelvis off the mat, we don't want this to happen. We don't want the hip and the rib compressing in, hiking. We don't want the hip going up into the ribs like that. We want to stay away from this kind of motion. It's going to be more of, I have my wood dowel from Pilates, so I'm going to grab it real quick. Straight across the hips, what I'm going to ask you to do is a 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock pelvic clock. So your two hip bones are going to be 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. If we section our pelvis in two halves, you're going to move from the left or the right half. When we go to lift one hip off the mat, it goes straight towards ceiling, you come back. It goes straight up to ceiling, you come back. The movement pattern that you're watching that you want to avoid is going to lift the hip up and your hip bone goes up into your ribs like that. If the hip bone goes up into your ribs like that, you want to make sure that you catch it and you open the gap in there on each side. So you want to catch that when it happens. So I'm going to come back down to the mat and then I'll show you what I mean. So now, your shoulders, your hips, the middle of the knee joints, straight down over the second toes. We're working with plumb lines. We're just keeping ourselves aligned with the plumb lines. And what I want you to do, your two hip bones are the 3 o'clock, the 9 o'clock. Place your thumbs on the bottom of each rib cage. Take index fingers, middle fingers, and make some room now between your rib cage, your hip bones. Now imagine that you lift one hip up. If there was a little ball on your hip, you'd be rolling the ball across. And then you have to go to the left side of the navel. Start to work those muscles like a guide wire. Pull that side to the left of the navel, down into the mat to get half the pelvis to come back down. Okay, now the right hip goes up. We're making that room there between rib and hip. Then go to the right side of the navel, 1 or 2 inches. Pull that hip down. Now keep going. So we're going to open up the space along the sides of our spine. Notice if it feels compressed, straight line across, so the hip goes up, the hip goes down, the hip goes up. We're making that room in there. Inhale. Sometimes this side feels a little harder for me. I'm going to focus on making space between right rib, right hip. Do a few on one side. Pull the hip back down. So this is how someone would start like belly dancing. You inhale and then you exhale. Try a couple on the other side. We're trying to move the pelvis. Our legs will stay relatively motionless, so we're not moving the legs that much. We're differentiating. Notice how there's a straight line. Inhale. Exhale, like a belt going one side up. If you're on a boat and it's rocking side to side, just try to keep that space in there equal. I just had a little adjustment on the right side of my low back. Maybe you'll feel something. 2 more. Inhale, exhale. So that was 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock on a numbers on a clock. Now, when we do the pelvic clock, you can experiment. Let's try something. Left hip up, so that's 9 o'clock up, 12 o'clock back, 3 o'clock up, 6 o'clock forward. We're going to do those little circles now. 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. 9 and 12 and 3 and 6. Now we're doing these little pelvic rotations. 9 and 12, 3 and 6. Little rotations. 9, back to 12, navel. back to 3, down to pubic bone, 6. One more set, up, up, down, down. Okay, hug in again. Then I'll show you the opposite of that. Release, realign, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Okay, now this right hip goes up first, which is 3 o'clock. So you're gonna go 3 o'clock, then 12 o'clock, navel, then 9 o'clock, then 6. You're gonna go 3, 12, 9, 6. 3 and 12, 9 and 6. 3 and 12, 9 and 6. What if you do 3, 6, 9, 12? That way was harder. So then 3, let's go back to 12, 9, and 6 to get it uniform. 3, 12, 9, and 6. Tighten your core to your spine. 3, 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 9, and 6. 2. So notice how the legs are relatively stable, not moving, but the pelvis is moving. Last set, awesome. Okay, so we're just working on alignment and we're working on muscle activation sequences of certain areas of the hips, the pelvis, core muscles. You'll feel like your low back is more free. Now, if you bring your feet back to the mat, okay, now the exact opposite's going to happen. The hips stay still. You're going to lift knees up in the air. And now what I want you to do, take one hand to each knee. Now without rocking pelvis forward or back, remember we want to keep neutral spine where 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock are straight across, and navel and pubic bone or everything's in the same alignment. So then you place one hand on each knee and then you do what's called a knee stir. So we stir the thighs deeper into the hip socket. Notice the differentiation there between the thigh where it goes into the hip socket, the acetabulum. Your abdominals are pulling in tight. So we're just getting proper motion sequence. The hips are stabilized, the legs move. So we don't want our pelvis to be rocking back or forth. We want to feel like our 2 hip bones narrow together, transversus abdominis narrows together, scoop core in tight. Okay, now we're going to go the opposite direction. Come back, inhale, exhale. Coming back around, inhale, exhale, just the legs move. 3, tighten your core to your back, scooping in. 2, notice how pelvis is completely still. And last one. And then gently just hug one leg in. So the pelvic clock, your hips move on purpose with control. You're fine-tuning your motion skills. You're beginning of motor movement. You're fine-tuning with control. And then when you reverse it, what we just did with the hips, the knee stirs, we kept pelvis stable, neutral spine. Now we're just going to go to the other side. Feel the front of the hip release. Feel your back drop into the mat. And inhale and exhale. One more each way. So I'm just going to slide back a little more. Just hug one leg in. You'll feel the tailbone long on your mat. And last one, switch. Inhale, exhale. One more time. Awesome. So now I just want you to straighten out your leg. We're going to roll onto our abdominals, and then from a lying down position, I'm going to have you do opposition arm leg raises. So this is going to be easier than when you're on all fours kneeling. So notice how your tailbone is long. I'm going to get that bar out of the way. So your tailbone's long, your legs are together. You're just going to straighten your legs onto the mat. Now I want you to stretch your arms overhead. Whenever you do this, make sure you don't go like that and arch the back off the mat. You want your hip bones down secure into the mat. Maybe even do a little bit of a rotation outward to really get your gluteals to turn on. Your legs are slightly rotated, tiny bit out. And then what I want you to do is stretch your arms over your head like this. Make sure that you don't let your shoulder hike into the ear. Shoulders drop away from ears, so sides of neck are long. Your abdominal wall scoops into the length of the spine, and then you're going to lift your face as if you're lifting head out of water. Your opposite arm and leg are going to reach different directions. Fingers stretch away from toes. Hold, stretch apart, lower down, and then switch to the other two sides. You're going to stretch apart, work those back and hip extensors. Fingers away from toes, and down. Stretch apart, scoop your core tight, hold, and down. Really feel abdominals scooping into the length of your spine. And down, 8 more. Fingers away from toes, scoop in, and down. Inhale, exhale, and 6. Stretch apart, and 5. Feel glutes turn on. Reach through toes, reach through fingers. 4 more. Reach apart. 3 more. Tighten core to spine. Work those back extensors, those glutes, those hip extensors. 2 more. Stretch apart. That's it. Lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. And 1 more. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Gently rock hips side to side. Release your back. Gently turn head side to side. Release your neck. All right, we're going to add on again. Okay, this part, I want you to lift everything up. Arms and legs, just lift everything up all at once. If you get any low back discomfort, then back out of it. Avoid lifting everything up. Maybe you would just go to one arm at a time like that, both arms. Or you can work both legs or just one leg at a time. So then you could just backtrack and still strengthen your back extensors. So now the next one, as long as it doesn't bother your back, tighten core to spine. Inhale. Now scoop in tight, arms and legs, lift and hold. Your abdominals are lifting the entire time. And down. Good. Let's do it again. Lift and hold. Tighten core in and down. Again, tighten your core and breathe in. Exhale, lift and hold. Gently release down. Let's do 2 more. Lengthen, lift and hold. Gently come back down. Let's do 1 more. Lift and hold. Really scoop in tight. Gently lower down. Okay, we're going to do 1 more set where you flutter kick your arms and legs. We're going to call it swimming, but you don't want your hips to move. So think of the 2 hip bones pulling tight across, horizontal belt, that's transversus abdominis, and then think of scooping in to the length of your spine, pelvic floor engagement. Then think of sides of waist, those rib cage muscles in between the ribs, and our obliques, legs, our obliques wrapping around sides of waist. Our fibers go into a V, and then they kind of internal, external obliques. So now, what I want you to do, you're going to lift everything up at once and go for a swim. So your core scoops in tight, your head lifts slightly out of water. Now keep stable and steady, and you inhale. And then you exhale, scoop in tight, inhale, and then you exhale. 2 more, inhale, exhale, work on the length. 1 more set, breathing in, and then you exhale. And you could work on doing that longer over time. And then if you take your hands, you roll your shoulders down, back, away from your ears, elbows hug in tight, deep inhale. Bend the knees, exhale. I just want you to press straight up, and let's go back into our rest pose, or balasana, just to release our back after doing all that extension. And then I'm going to have you start by stretching arms overhead, You could even have like a pillow if you wanted a little block under your forehead to make it more comfortable. You could do that. Bring the floor up to you and just breathe. Inhale and exhale. Really feel the expansion. Your spine's lengthening, oppositional energy. And then feel how your sits bones are pulling straight back behind you. We're going to do a little variation now. Instead of the arms being over our head like this, bring them back and face palms to sky. And stay here and breathe. Stretch across your upper mid back. Feel how your sits bones keep pulling backwards towards the mat so you get your whole low back area to open up. You inhale and then you exhale. If it bothers your knees to be down low like this, take your toes, curl them under. If you wanted to give extra support to your pelvis, you could actually stick a block kind of under your pelvis like that, just to give you a little bit of support. Let me go this way. There. And then you kind of have a little something, my block. I don't even touch it. Inhale. Exhale. Probably a yoga blanket would be better because you can make it a little higher. Now pull those sits bones straight back behind you. Really feel this part opening. Couple more deep inhales and exhales. One more time. Slowly walk your hands under your shoulders. Rise up, lengthen head away from tailbone. And then from here, I'm going to ask you to slide down flat on your back for a second. So I'm going to ask you to come all the way back down to your mat, all the way down. And I just want you to settle into your mat for a second. Come into this little Shavasana. So you want to feel like the front of the hips should feel like they're open through here, released a little bit, and then the low back's going to feel like it's close on the mat. You're going to feel like your spine is in contact with the mat a little bit lower down. You'll have the sensation of just feeling a little bit more even. So just in case one side felt like it was a little bit off, just take a few seconds to breathe in and then breathe out. And inhale and exhale. Let your spine settle into the mat. And I want to do one more thing before we end. Our upper traps get overworked, and a lot of times they're gripping, and it makes your neck and your shoulders ache. So let's slide the legs back into that beginning position. Shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, everything's aligned. I just want to get you out of your upper traps and get into the middle traps. Like middle back between the shoulder blades, not way up here at the top. Think of an upside down triangle. Your two shoulders are the 2 points of the triangle. So the two shoulders are the triangle, and then it comes down into the point. So those fibers are going to come down smaller. What I want you to do, you're going to have your palms face up. Feel how when you inhale, you open the front of your chest, your collarbones are wide. And then basically, after you inhale, I want you to start stretching arms long as if you're going to reach them down to your heels. Stretch fingertips. See how my shoulders pull down and back a little? So you inhale, feel everything open up. And then you exhale. Stretch fingertips long. Feel the fibers middle back between the shoulder blades. Feel it somewhere in that area. Inhale. And then you exhale. Middle back's working. Instead of those upper traps Release, stretch the fingers long. Inhale. Now exhale. 3 more times. Relax for a second. Chest open. You inhale. And then you exhale. Fingertips long. Last one. You inhale. And then you exhale. Fingertips long. So that just dropped those shoulders. It opened up your shoulders and your chest a little. Okay, now we're going to turn to our side for a second, and then we're just going to push ourselves up to a seated position. All right, and then once you come up into your seated position, it should feel kind of better now. It shouldn't feel like all bunched up, and I don't want you to bunch your shoulders up into your ears because we got them to come down now. We got them to release. Now just bring hands down by your sides for a moment, maybe hands on your knees, and just sit for a second. Just settle in. Feel equally grounded on each one of your sits bones, each half of your pelvis. So that's what we're trying to do, making sure that one hip isn't hiking up higher than the other. We want to feel like we're level, we're equal. And one way to know for sure, bring your arms up over your head, sit tall, and just let gravity settle into the bottom of your pelvis for a second. You'll feel like equal weight across each half of the pelvis. So that's what I mean by equal weight on each half of the pelvis. So you're not leaning. Just take a deep inhale. Just wanted to give you a little reset today. Exhale. Hands to heart, feeling grateful just to have a little extra time for self-care, and then just feel better aligned so your movement patterns are better, because our muscle activation sequences can be off if your bones are misaligned. You're starting from a different point or an angle, and so certain muscles can't fire properly, and then sometimes like you can bypass certain muscles that don't even turn on at all. So that's why we want to get our alignment so that we can fire proper muscles and execute motion. So when everything's firing properly, then you work the right muscle group. You don't strain certain muscles that are working harder than the others. And then when that happens, certain muscles just keep getting weaker and weaker, and then you're prone to injury because certain muscles are getting stronger, they're overworked, they get strained, while others are weaker. So that's why we took the time today to do all that. Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial section to feel what neutral pelvis is, neutral spine, how keeping your hips hinged, lifting straight up, straight down, that's your spinal stability work. And then when you roll up bone by bone, that's your mobility work. And it's all done with thoughtful intent. The mind controls the body. So that's why it's good to slow down, focus on what you're doing, and understand why you're doing it. Thanks everyone. See you again soon, all right? Peace, take care. This will definitely make your back feel better and your hip alignment. Bye. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, share, subscribe. Thank you. Bye.